These prestigious luxury brands are typically not the first ones you think about when talking about labor exploitation because they sell this idea that they are the good guys. The reality is they engage in the same system as lower-end fast fashion that allows exploitation to happen right under their nose by contracting out the work to independent factories that pretty much get to do as they please. $1,000 for a t-shirt. Lord, where did we go wrong? I'm gonna say what no one else wants to admit, which is that mainstream luxury fashion profits on the systematic degradation of people's self-esteem. In an increasingly materialistic and wealth-centered society, people will pay ridiculous amounts of money just to be able to adorn their body with names and logos so that they can be perceived as worthy. When we have been conditioned to tie our worth to the possession of material wealth, who benefits? Those who profit off of our pursuit of that material wealth. Luxury fashion has an incredibly high profit margin thanks to consumers' insatiable pursuit of trophy purses and red bottoms, flashy designer belts, and diamond chains. This insatiable pursuit is fueled by many things, but at the core of those many things is one thing: engineered insecurity and the misinformed belief that you can heal deep wounds with a little retail therapy. Hey y'all, it's Sarah Maria. Welcome back to my channel where we break down the problem of consumerism and its intersection with other systems of oppression, taking a deep dive into how we can be more conscious consumers and people in general. In today's video, we're ripping the mask off luxury fashion and exposing its exploitation of laborers and consumers. Let's get into it. In many ways, logos have become more important than style. Being able to adorn your body with a certain name, a certain symbol, is more important than adorning your body with things that you feel actually align with your personal style, even less with things that are actually functional to you. Iconic fashion houses such as Vuitton, Dior, Yves Saint Laurent had humble beginnings, worlds away from their now ultra commercialized names. Vuitton, for example, was founded in 1854 and was solely dedicated to the production of flat top trunks with unpickable locks, both invented by Vuitton to create more functional luggage in anticipation of the invention of the motor vehicle. Dior began as an illustrator who was then hired to work for iconic fashion houses in the 1930s. He founded his own fashion house in 1946 and coined the revolutionary New Look, which aimed to redefine femininity in the post-war era, offering designs celebrating opulence and sophistication. Yves Saint Laurent, now commonly referred to as YSL, actually began as a fashion prodigy who was granted the golden opportunity to work under Dior at the age of 17. After Dior's sudden death in 1957, Saint Laurent was named creative director of the House of Dior at the age 21, becoming the world's youngest couturier. Yves Saint Laurent was a revolutionary. A quote of his reads, "Fashion is no longer solely a domain of the rich. It no longer clings to class distinctions. A fashion designer must capture the spirit of his time. A fashion designer must be a liberator." He's also on record saying, "What I would really like is to make less expensive dresses so that anyone can wear them. Anyone can afford to buy them. I like sophistication. I hate anything rich." He also dedicated his craft to the liberation of the female body and psyche. To quote him again, "The purpose of fashion is to not only make women look beautiful, but to give them confidence, to allow them to be comfortable in their own skin. I have always wanted to be of service to women, to walk alongside them through this great wave of liberation we've experienced over the last century. My dream is to give women the essentials that make up a classic wardrobe, not to pander to passing trends." Now, almost a century later, we have seen the commercialization of these fashion houses, watching them make the shift towards literally pandering to passing trends. Now, their namesake is being used as nothing more than a pawn in multi-billion-dollar luxury conglomerates, used not for art, revolution, or liberation. Rather, their namesake is being used for the very opposite, to keep people enslaved. LVMH was created in 1987, and it was the merging of Moet Hennessy, which is a wine and spirits brand, and Louis Vuitton. And it claimed to be ushering in a new era for the luxury industry. A new era, you say. An era of hyper-capitalist greed. but okay. 1988, acquisition of Givenchy. 1994, acquisition of Guerlain. 1996, acquisition of Loewe and Celine. 1997, acquisition of Sephora. 2001, acquisition of Fendi. And I could go on and on and on and on. Today, LVMH has monopolized 6 different sectors: wine and spirits, fashion and leather goods, perfumes and cosmetics, watches and jewelry, selective retailing, and other activities. Whatever that means. They own 75 different luxury brands as subsidiaries, including Dior and Vuitton, obviously. YSL is also owned by a conglomerate, but it's a different one named Kering. Warning, I am not an economist, but to my understanding, conglomeration is pretty much the combining of different subsidiary companies into one big giant corporation through mergers and acquisitions. It's pretty much one big company buys out other companies and puts them all under one umbrella. And this has many economic benefits. Companies owned by a conglomerate such as LVMH have access to internal capital for easier growth. They also diversify their profit streams, lower their risk of loss, and most importantly, expand a consumer base. Another example of a conglomerate is actually L'Oreal, which is the cosmetics company. As many of us know, they do have their own namesake brand, like they sell products under the name L'Oreal, but they also own many other brands like Maybelline, NYX, Garnier, CeraVe, La Roche-Posay, YSL Beauty, Prada Beauty. All of these other brands are actually owned by L'Oreal. My point in saying all of this about conglomerates is that when you hear the phrase, the top 1% is controlling everything, this is one of the things that contributes to that. To give you a visual, imagine one giant that towers over all of us. We're like ants. He wants to grow even bigger, so he dresses himself up as all these different things to appeal to us in many different ways. We spend our hard-earned money to obtain all of these different things that are presented to us as valuable, things that will make us happy and beautiful. This allows the giant to keep growing bigger and bigger while we stay the same size. The giant is growing so big that he's taking up all the oxygen and he's blocking the sunlight necessary for our survival. He's growing so big that it's literally killing us. We feel the suffocating effects of his limitless growth, but we don't even know he's there. We can't actually see him because to us, all we see is the different little things he dresses up as, but we don't realize that they are all him, and our contribution to all of these little things contributes to him. I'm not sure if that made sense, but what I mean by this is when we consume from all these different brands that seem different to each other, they seem like they're competing with each other even. We don't actually conceptualize that we're putting money into the pockets of the same person every time. This is what facilitates the ever-widening wealth gap and the dominance of the ruling class. We all know the saying, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, but we don't realize that our obsession with consumption greatly fuels this. Luxury fashion used to be independent fashion houses run by true artists with a vision, with individuality, with innovations. Now, luxury fashion is practically a huge conglomerate run by the same set of hands. A conglomerate which sustains itself on a deeply insecure and materialistic consumer base. And another thing to think about is, who is luxury fashion actually targeting? Spoiler alert, it's not the people that are actually rich. It's the people that want to look rich. And I'm gonna insert this clip from another creator's video, and she explains this really well.
Steve Jobs is famous for his black turtleneck look, amongst other things. Despite his immense wealth, he always kept that same very simple look. No designer logos in sight. And this is the same case for many of the uber rich. Bill and Melinda Gates, Mackenzie Scott, Melanie Perkins, Mark Zuckerberg, Whitney Wolfe Herd. These aren't people who are running around in Gucci slides and Versace belts and Louis Vuitton emblazoned outfits. No matter how much I would kill to see Bill Gates dripping in Gucci, it'd be a look. But why don't we see the uber rich in these designer brands? I think it's because they don't need to prove they're rich. We know. And I think that's what designer brands are really selling. They're selling conspicuous consumption, aka the spending and consumption of luxuries in an attempt to enhance one's prestige.
Nevertheless, it is still true that The people consuming luxury fashion are of relatively high tax brackets. They may not be Bill Gates, but they are definitely wealthy. According to an article by Media Culture, the median income of a luxury fashionista is $94,000 a year, which is 26% higher than the median income in the US. So why is luxury consumption a problem, you ask? Luxury fashion engages in the same exploitation of labor, more on that later, that we see in fast fashion, just with a built-in classist exclusion of the majority of the population thanks to those hefty price tags. The median annual salary in the US is just under $60,000. When you take out your rent or your mortgage, taking care of children, bills, groceries, car note, the average American and the large majority of the US population simply is not able to spend $5,000 on a trench coat. This built-in classism in this industry not only places a spotlight on the ever-widening wealth gap, it romanticizes it. We praise the women that boast that LV tote, that wear that infamous Cartier ring, praise the men with the Rolex on their wrist and the $1,000 t-shirt that reads nothing but 4 letters, DIOR. $1,000 for a t-shirt. Lord, where did we go wrong? Praise them for what though? For paying thousands of dollars in order to have their facade of self-worth advertised on their body? For paying thousands of dollars for a single purse that was made by laborers that work long hours operating dangerous machinery for little to no pay? Not praiseworthy if you ask me. I'm truly not trying to shame the consumer that purchases luxury goods. Well, maybe a little. But mostly I'm trying to shame the industry that facilitates this highway robbery. And I'm trying to shame the culture of mindless consumption that just does not ask enough questions about what we're buying and why we're buying it. The facade of self-worth. Let's talk about it. Many of you might know the Kanye West song that goes like, man, I promise I'm so self-conscious. That's why you always see me with at least one of my watches. Rollies and Pashas done drove me crazy. I can't even pronounce nothing past that Versace. It seems we live in the American dream. The people highest up got the lowest self-esteem. Just a little aside, Rollies and Pashas reference the luxury watches made by the brands Rolex and Cartier, which retail for tens of thousands of dollars or more. And Versace references the luxury brand Versace. In the beginning of this video, I said the luxury fashion industry profits off of engineered insecurity and the misinformed belief that you can heal deep wounds with a little retail therapy. What Kanye West expressed in this verse is not unique to him. It really speaks to larger consciousness and the struggle with consumerism. Consumerism is an economic and social system that encourages the consumption of goods and services as a means of attaining well-being. The rampant consumption of luxury goods that we see all over the place is due to the fact that we are conditioned to feel like we are not inherently worthy if we are not wealthy. Society teaches us this in the way they look down upon and vilify and are just generally disgusted by the poor and the homeless. To really show that we are wealthy, we are worthy, we feel the need to have these items that everyone knows are ridiculously expensive and sport them almost nonchalantly. Like Kanye saying, you always see me with at least one of my watches, implying that he has many. Like, yeah, this is my favorite Chanel bag, implying that you have more than one. Like, I'm just gonna throw on my everyday jewelry, just something casual. The everyday jewelry is a $10,000 watch, a $5,000 ring, a real diamond necklace, and matching earrings. Or welcome to my luxury haul.
Today I have a luxury haul for you guys. Doing another huge luxury shopping haul.
So many purchases that I've made these past couple months.
I'm obsessed. How gorgeous. This is her. This is so cute. This is a super rare item.
Like, what do you mean an entire haul of items that each cost hundreds to thousands of dollars and you got them all within the last year or few months? What? Consumerism and capitalism work very hard to rob us of our self-esteem and our sense of self-worth so that they can literally sell it back to us. The gag is, no matter how much you buy or how much you spend, nothing can magically grant you something that can only come from within. That luxury purchase is not going to change your life. It's not going to make you happy if you are currently unhappy. And it's not going to grant you self-worth. Only the facade of it. According to Good On You, 75% of luxury brands score very poor or not good enough on a scale rating their enforcement of ethical labor standards. So just a little bit of background, Good On You is a database that pulls together publicly available information about what different brands are doing with regards to major sustainability and ethics issues. They use the brand's own public reporting along with information from accredited organizations like the World Fair Trade Organization, CDP Climate Change, and Global Organic Textile Standard, just to name a few. They have a detailed rating criteria that defines major issues and uses data to determine what actions brands are or are not taking with regards to these issues. The category of people covers supply chain risk, worker empowerment, and livable wages, among other things. Pretty much every major luxury brand scores very poorly in this category. Louis Vuitton, for example, scored a measly 2 out of 5 for having none of its supply chains certified by labor standards and taking insufficient steps to prevent the use of cotton from Xinjiang, which is a region in China with high risk of forced labor of the Uyghur population. If you don't know, Uyghurs are a Muslim ethnic minority that have faced extreme human rights violations and persecution by the Chinese government for over 10 years. Good On You says, despite enormous revenues, luxury brands have been found to be among the poorest performers in terms of addressing risks of forced labor within garment supply chains. And this is where it gets really juicy. So an investigation by the New York Times discovered that some factories that produce clothes for labels like Max Mara, Louis Vuitton, and Fendi would hire garment workers to work from home and sew clothes. One of these garment workers that was interviewed said that she would earn €1 for every meter of fabric that she finished. For finishing an entire coat, she would earn about €24. And it's very time intensive, so she'd be lucky if she could finish 2 coats in one entire working day. Mind you, these Max Mara coats will go on to retail for over €1,000 in the store. An article by Quartz reads, home workers are generally informal workers with no contract who do work outside a factory, though it's typically a factory that hires them when they need labor-intensive piecework done cheap, like attaching sequins or sewing buttonholes. Beyond the low pay, these workers generally don't have insurance or any way to address issues like being paid late or not at all. Often they're women who may need the work to survive while being able to stay home and care for children. The brands that home workers produce for may not always know they exist. Fashion companies contract factories to produce their clothes or go through a middleman who negotiates with the factories on their behalf. The factory farms out the work to the home workers. These prestigious luxury brands are typically not the first ones you think about when talking about labor exploitation because they sell this idea that they are the good guys. The reality is they engage in the same system as lower end fast fashion that allows exploitation to happen right under their nose by contracting out the work to independent factories that pretty much get to do as they please. The reason why this outsourcing of labor is necessary is directly due to overproduction for the purpose of increasing profits. These brands are producing so much that they can't even reasonably oversee all of their supply chains even if they wanted to. An investigative journalist went into a leather goods factory in Italy called Zabri, which works for the LVMH group and its subsidiary Kenzo. Zabri, which is contracted by LVMH, then subcontracts another factory called Thermoplaque.
Thermoplaque specializes in drying animal skins. Large tanneries working for luxury brands such as Zabri send their leather here. Each animal hide weighs between 15 and 30 kilos. Workers carry hundreds of them every day. Most of the employees here are Senegalese, and Alfonso Guerra has a funny way of speaking about them.
Perché sono quelli che hanno più fame. Il senegalese ha un carattere compatibile. Qui c'è un po' di problema quando c'è il Ramadan. Perché stanno, quando è un mese senza mangiare, allora il giorno li vedi un po'
He said what? He said what? Cut the cameras. She goes on to explain that the use of unregulated Senegalese labor is not uncommon in the luxury leather industry in Italy. The majority of these workers are on short-term contracts, no job security, no benefits, no insurance, nothing. Additionally, she spoke to the woman in charge of the leather goods sector at the Department of Occupational Health, who states there is a direct link between short-term contracts and accidents at work.
Questi lavoratori ormai vengono assunti per una settimana, un giorno, anche un'ora. Il lavoratore straniero che spesso entra adesso nelle concerie con un rapporto di somministrazione lavoro non ha la possibilità di farsi un'esperienza personale e rende oltretutto questi lavoratori molto più suscettibili.
Back in the thermoplaque factory, she speaks with the factory owner again, asking him how he ensures worker safety when handling these large, dangerous machines and harmful chemicals that are necessary for the production of leather. He says he provides protective equipment. Yeah, okay.
So, under the pretext of exploring the factory, we take the opportunity to ask a few questions, filming with our hidden camera.
Ça fait longtemps que vous travaillez là?
Ouais, bon, je travaille jusqu'à un mois.
Un mois?
Ouais, un mois.
D'accord. Et qui c'est qui vous a donné les équipements de protection? Ah, c'est vous qui les avez achetés? On vous en donne pas ici? D'accord. Vous travaillez combien d'heures par jour? 13 heures par jour.
The boss's son has come to intervene.
This really just keeps getting worse and worse. She then goes on to interview an ex-thermoplaque worker.
This man worked at Thermoplaque in 2014 and claims that the boss, Alfonso Guerra, would sometimes disable the safety mechanisms on the machines to increase productivity. He lost 3 knuckles. He agrees to talk to us as a witness, provided he can remain anonymous.
C'est la première fois que je travaille. Je l'ai pris, je l'ai mise, j'ai appuyé sur les pédales et la lame a bloqué. La première fois, ça a bloqué. Alors, j'ai retourné, j'ai remis la peau, j'ai pédalé et ça a pris. Comme ça. J'ai pris mes gants, on m'a enlevé tous les 3 phalanges des doigts. C'était dur. J'ai pleuré, les nuits, j'ai pleuré. Allez. Le docteur me demande comment ça s'est passé. Et le responsable voulait dire, il a menti, en disant que c'est autre chose. Et moi, j'ai dit non, c'est la machine.
Finally, just to put the cherry on top as if we needed one, these workers are also granted zero protection in terms of guaranteeing payment for the work they did. She interviewed 2 workers 2 months after they left Thermoplaque.
This is what they claim to have received as a leaving present, a violent beating for having dared to demand payment. According to them, this was the work of Alfonso Guerra, along with one of his sons.
Mi hanno dato appuntamento per prendere i soldi qua. Poi sono venuto qui e ho trovato quello stronzo di Alfonso, qui con il suo figliolo, capirò. Altri 6 persone. Avevano bastoni, ferri, coltelli, tutto. Poi mi hanno aggressato con lui, capito, mio amico. Quando sono venuto io mi hanno colpito un bastone di ferro.
According to Czech, the attackers beat him until he fell to the ground unconscious.
I don't know about you guys, but I am so angry, beyond angry, honestly. Beyond angry and so utterly disgusted that this is allowed to happen. And that consumers continue to mindlessly support this industry for no other reason than upholding and satisfying their own materialism. What disgusts me even more is that these CEOs and business shareholders have fully built their wealth and continue to sustain it on this oppression. This documentary is great. It's super informative. The full documentary is linked below, so please check it out when you have the time. In conclusion, to quote Yves Saint Laurent again, elegance means completely forgetting what you are wearing. Above all, it's a person's character that counts. The elegance of their actions, of their heart, have nothing to do with wearing expensive clothes. How terrible would it be if it was only about that? Elegance is a way of moving. It's about being able to adapt to every circumstance in life. Without an elegant heart, there is no elegance. Our worth is not determined by the clothes we wear, the logos, the name brands, or how much it costs. Our worth is inherent to our being, and we have to make the collective shift away from deriving our worth from material things, especially when these material things are produced from systematic oppression. There is so much more to say about exploitation in the luxury fashion industry, and I will be going more in depth in a future video specifically about exploitation of natural resources and robbery of indigenous cultures. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on your post notifications so you can be notified every time I upload. I also have an Instagram called @FightBigFashion where I make infographics and share news and resources. And most importantly, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear them. Until next time, ciao!